Dirty Bird podcast contains foul language and is not appropriate for young fledglings. Listener discretion is advised. Our intro music is brought to you by Ricky Pistone, aka Dick Piston, and our outro music is brought to you by the Sidewalk Slammers. Check them out wherever you get your music.
Are you looking for a podcast today with ornithology and humor you crave? Well, I know of these guys and it's birds they like. It's Dirty Bird, yeah, they're just a couple guys who really like birds. It's Dirty Bird, yeah, they're pretty dirty, but they really like birds.
Hello, and welcome to Dirty Bird Podcast, a podcast that's serious about birds, but nothing else. I'm Dr. Jahn, and in each episode I pick an individual bird species, tell you everything you need to know about them. I also like to record outside. Today I'm sitting out on the dock in the Chisholm Creek in Virginia. Lots of good bird noise. There's blue jays just chattering away. Here's some eastern kingbirds buzzing. There's some barn swallows flying around. There is a bald eagle nest right across the creek from me. Maybe they'll chime in. Also, some human noise too. You know, every once in a while a boat goes by and there's a road nearby too. So, you know, you get those people who think that they're NASCAR drivers. But birds and people live alongside together. So I guess we're going to listen to birds and people alongside. But hopefully we get lots of nice bird noise while we talk about this episode's bird, the streak-chested Antpitta. So this is a listener-suggested episode, but before I go into that, I do want to talk about this episode's Birdwatch. So Birdwatch is that segment I do. People can write in or send me voice memos and just tell me about a birding experience. This episode's Birdwatch comes from Jake, who wrote into me on Instagram commenting about the osprey episode. And I just wanted to share his personal osprey story. He's only 3 hours away from Iris, an osprey celebrity in Missoula, Montana. Jake writes, I've been to many a baseball game where Iris was watching the game and me eating a burrito on Center Field Hill. I can't help but take a tangent to talk a little more in depth about Iris. So Iris is part of a group of ospreys known as the Hellgate Canyon ospreys. And this is because Iris's nest sits right at the edge of Hellgate Canyon in Missoula, Montana, along the Clark Fork River. The nesting platform Iris now uses was built in 2007 after she was observed nesting on a nearby power pole. Iris has been observed nesting in Missoula since 1999, making her the oldest known wild osprey at 27 years old. Iris is named for a unique flecks of brown in her otherwise yellow eyes. Iris's longtime and first husband, Stanley, did not return to the nest in 2016. He likely died, during migration. They go down to South America. Oh, there's some bald eagles. Yeah, the bald eagles heard me talking about ospreys. They're like, meow. Do they have any fish we can steal? So Stanley did not return in 2016, but every time I mention Stanley, that bald eagle, it's kind of ominous. Maybe Stanley met a bad end to a bald eagle. But in 2018, Iris found a new hubby named Louie. The relationship didn't last longer than that year, though. Louie left her for another female. Ugh. Iris took some time to herself after that, but in 2024, she found romance again with her current partner, Finnegan. It really is kind of like a osprey soap opera. So thanks, Jake, for writing in. If anyone wants to reach me, it's dirtybirdpodcast@instagram.com or dirtybirdpodcast@gmail.com. Those are the two easiest ways to get a hold of me. And let me know your episode suggestions. If it's been forever and I haven't done the bird you suggested, write me again because I probably forgot. I used to keep like a document where I would write all the episode recommendations, and I can't find it anymore. So some of them are works in progress, though. Like Mark, if you're out there listening, I will be doing a Warbler episode eventually. And we are getting some good bird noise. I like that those bald eagles pitched in. We got some doggy noise too. Pepper, my dog, is actually sleeping at my feet. And she's pretty quiet, but there's some barky dogs too around. I also wanted to share a new review on Apple Podcasts that I got. Please, y'all, write me reviews on Spotify or Apple, wherever you listen. I think you can only write reviews on Apple. You can only just do stars on Spotify. But anyway, this review comes from Caddy Dennis and is titled Great Listen for Road Trips. I love this podcast. It's about the only podcast that will keep me entertained while I'm driving. Thank you so much and drive safely. All right, so now for the big reveal. Who suggested this week's episode? And it was Fernando. Fernando, thank you. Fernando has written me several emails with some great birding stories. He has actually served as staff on National Geographic ships. He wrote to me that he listened to my frigate bird episode before going to the frigate bird rookery on Iguana Island that boasts over 5,000 breeding pairs. It's crazy. A freaking National Geographic scientist was listening to my dumb little show. Thanks, Fernando. But I wanted to do this episode because he shared with me that the streak-chested Antpitta is his daughter's favorite bird. So I'm going to keep this episode clean so that he can hopefully share it with her. So there'll be a lot of darns and shucks in this episode instead of my usual foul language. And this will probably be on the short side of the episodes too. As we'll learn, this bird is down in Meso in South America. And as I've talked about on the show before, if a bird doesn't occur in North America or Europe, chances are there's not much research on it. It's just sort of the Western scientific bias. So I really could only find a handful of studies on this bird, and some of them that I found were only in Spanish. Google Translate kind of sucks. So, Fernando, honestly, you may know more about this bird than I do. So let me know if I missed something or got something wrong. Or any of my listeners, let me know. But let's start off with describing this bird. And you'll notice I've titled this the dad bod bird. Antpittas are really cool looking birds, as we'll talk about with their evolution. They're kind of just like ground forest specialists. So they have a very unique body shape. And I've never really heard about Antpittas before Fernando suggested this. They're a group of birds in Middle and South America. And they're a surprisingly large family containing about 50 species. They're small, only about 4 to 5 inches long. And like I said, they're forest. I mean, it's jungle down there. So they're jungle living birds. And while they can fly, they have a largely terrestrial existence. That's because one of their major food sources is ants, hence the name Antpitta. Their common name literally is ant-eating pittas, because pittas are a group of birds from Africa and Asia, and Antpittas resemble them. So these are birds that do a lot of walking instead of flying, and they have small tails, small wings, because they don't really need much of a tail when they're just walking all the time. The tail really for birds is kind of like a rudder, and also adds some extra lift too, as I've talked about with bird aerodynamics. So if you're not doing a lot of flying, you're just walking around, you don't really need much of a tail. Think about like ostriches and emus, like they don't have much of a tail. Well, ostriches kind of do, but they use it more for display. The streak-chested Antpitta, I've seen it described as a plump ball on stick legs. It kind of looks like a juvenile robin, how they're like very round, and they got those long legs. Robins are kind of goofy looking. The Antpitta is a little goofy looking too, but it's elegant on those legs. It obviously knows how to strut around. It does have a tail, but it is the smallest little nub. And it does give it a really funny appearance when it's perched. It honestly looks like it has a pot belly. Its coloration is largely cryptic. It's got a mix of streaky browns, tans, grays, blacks, and whites. But true to its name, its breast is white with black streaks, so that's why it gets that streak-chested common name. And it honestly kind of looks like a wood or a hermit thrush on its breast. Its two most distinctive features are a tan eye ring that stands out on its otherwise dark head and a black mustache line that traces back from its beak. So, I mean, this is why it is the dad bod bird. I mean, it's got a pot belly, it's got glasses on, and it's got a mustache. Like, this bird, it just needs to be perched like in front of a grill, like, saying, oh, it's not the heat that gets you, it's the humidity. Both sexes have the same plumage, but the male is just slightly larger than the female. And distinctive behavior of the streak-chested antpitta that can be used to help ID it is when it's perched or resting, it will repeatedly puff out its chest feathers. And it also does this when singing, too. It makes it look like it's taking these like huge belly breaths, and it just exaggerates the heck out of that pot belly. I had to go back and edit out a swear word. Sorry, Fernando's daughter. So, where are you going to find this bird? The streak-chested antpitta is a bird of tropical lowland forests with a range stretching from Honduras through Costa Rica and Nicaragua, through Panama and into Colombia and Ecuador. It rarely strays into the mountains. It's almost always found below 2,000 feet. They prefer mature secondary forests that have lots of leaf litter that will harbor their preferred food, bugs. And they're birds of the deep forest. You're not really going to find them near forest edges. They also like a little water attraction nearby, like a stream or a river, but they don't like areas that flood regularly. Since they're feeding on the ground usually, if there's flooding and the ground's covered, they can't eat, they can't forage. So let's talk about their name. I already explained the common name Antpitta, literally just like an 1800s ornithologist thought they looked like old world pitta birds. Notice they like to eat ants, so it's like, this is Antpitta. They're a little bit like cavemen. Antpitta. But its scientific name for the streak-chested antpitta is Hylopesis perspicillatus. The genus Hylopesis contains 5 other antpitta species. It comes from the Greek word hylo for wood and pes for foot or bottom, basically meaning a bird found on the floor of the forest. And that species name, perspicillatus, means wearing glasses or wearing spectacles in New Latin. I also found it could mean like sharp-sighted. But this refers to the tan eye ring that does make it look like it's wearing a pair of tan glasses. And in fact, the common name for this bird used to be the Spectacled Antpitta, which honestly I think is a way better common name. I couldn't find exactly why the name was changed. It occurred in the 1980s. I'm guessing at some stuffy ornithologist convention. Like they have no sense of humor. They're like, no, not spectacled. We need to call it streak-chested. But I'd like to bring back the Spectacled Antpitta. I mean, I just think it's a better name. I want my birds wearing glasses. And, there's other birds that are called spectacled. I think there's like a spectacled owl or something like that. There needs to be just like a club of spectacled birds. Or maybe that's my life list, is I want to see every spectacled bird in the wild. In Spanish, the streak-chested antpitta, it's called Tororoi pechilestado. Tororoi is the Spanish word for antpitta birds, and pechilestado means streak-chested. So I guess maybe the common name was changed out of respect to reflect the Spanish name for the bird. So I'm a little torn on what to call it. I mean, you do want to, reflect what the locals, the people living alongside this bird, call it. But I mean, man, spectacled is just, I love that name. Fernando, maybe we need you to make the deciding vote on what we should call this bird. So let's talk about its vocalizations. Its song is described as a short series of plaintive whistled notes, sometimes described as a whoop, 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 whoop. And they also make several calls like a chipping, trilling alarm call. And they make communication calls between each other, but I couldn't really find any examples of this. As we'll talk about, these aren't really songbirds, although I do think their vocalizations, don't sound out of place. They sound a lot like songbirds that, I would hear here in North America and everything. So I don't really have these classically beautiful bird songs, although I think they sound pretty. So what do they eat? They feed almost entirely, from what I could find, on terrestrial insects like ants, beetles, spiders, crickets, grasshoppers, and snails. And the antpitta is sort of like the towhee of South America. It hops through the leaf litter, scratches up leaves with its feet, pauses to look for bugs, and then snatches them up. It's like flipping over leaves with its beak and stuff. Like if you've ever watched a towhee when it feeds before, go listen to my towhee episode. These are pretty much filling a similar niche to towhees, except these are rainforest towhees. I did find 2 documented accounts of it feeding on small lizards and frogs. I'm guessing that, like most birds, the antpitta is an opportunistic predator. While it specializes on insects, it won't pass up other easy meals. There's not much information on their breeding. They're pretty secretive birds living in the dense rainforests of South America, and direct observation is pretty difficult. Really, all the information on streak-chested antpitta breeding comes from one guy named Scutch, who observed a nest in 1969. So some of the information I'll say is just generalized from antpittas in general. They are socially monogamous during the breeding season, which is from April to July, but otherwise they keep to themselves. Both males and females will defend territories up to 2 acres in size. 2 acres, that's a pretty big territory for just this small little bird. Males attract females with singing from perches, and will also use that pot-belly puffed-out chest to display to them. Women love a dad bod, right? At least that's what I keep telling myself. Males have been observed doing courtship feeds to females, where they present them with insects and then feed it to them to be like, look, I'm a big, strong antpitta male. I can provide. Breed with me. They build platform nests in low vegetation in the understory of the forest. Usually they pick palm shrubs for this. Their nests are really rudimentary compared to the woven cups of songbirds. Really, it's just sort of a jumble of sticks and dead leaves. Kind of reminds me of pigeon nests. Oh, blue heron. Females typically lay 2 eggs. They are a creamy white color with lots of streaks on them, and the eggs are tiny, only about an inch long. Both male and female streak-chested antpittas have been observed incubating the eggs, and they take turns sitting on the nest. They're pretty good at dividing up parenting duties. And the shifts that they'll take incubating those eggs, it ranges anywhere from 1 minute to an hour and a half. And once the eggs hatch and those hungry little nestlings emerge, they feed their nestlings protein-rich bugs. This is common for most birds. I think only the, oil birds, that was it. They're like one of the only birds to feed their nestlings not bugs. They feed them fruit. And while the adults are, insect eaters too, so this isn't like that big of a switch for them to feed their nestlings bugs. Not like hummingbirds. Did you know hummingbirds feed their nestlings bugs? Which is kind of crazy thinking about them catching bugs with those long, tiny, skinny bills. The antpittas are already eating bugs, so it's not that big of a switch for them to go feed their nestlings some bugs also. But the adults feed their nestlings some bugs they wouldn't normally eat themselves, like earthworms. And as a father of a 1.5-year-old, I can attest that it's hard to keep up with feeding your kid. You just want to feed them whatever they'll eat, whatever you can find. Here, kid, take an earthworm. Go on. And Scutch, when he was observing streak-chested antpitta nest, he recorded that the nestlings got fed on an average of once every 2.5 hours. The adults likely eat the fecal sacs of the young rather than carrying them away from the nest, as this has been observed in other antpitta species. We've talked about fecal sacs before. It's basically like bird diapers. Adults have been observed singing right next to their nests. This is really a bit of a gamble because it sort of advertises their nest to predators, but it also helps to declare their territory and keep other antpittas from coming around and eating the bugs that they need to feed their nestlings. And like we said, these are terrestrial birds. They're small, weak flyers, so they don't wander far from their territories. And even juveniles, once they become independent, don't wander far to set up their own territories. Usually they're setting up their own territories adjacent to their parents. There aren't great surveys of the populations of streak-chested antpittas, but it's estimated there are around 50,000 breeding pairs. They're scattered across a fairly wide range, which does make them resilient. However, as forests are increasingly cleared for development, they are vulnerable to habitat loss and fragmentation of the population. I read a book about birds of Ecuador entitled Libro Rojo de las Aves de Ecuador, and it does list the streak-chested antpitta as a vulnerable species. A study done in Costa Rica, published in Tropical Journal of Environmental Science, found that the streak-chested antpitta populations were more sensitive to fragmentation of forests compared to Baird's trogon. So this just shows it's not a bird of forest edges. It likes tracts of intact forest. And so like logging and can really impact these birds. Like even if you're leaving stands of trees, that's not what they like. They just like, unbroken wilderness. All right, we're really flying through this Antpitta section, which is ironic because Antpittas don't really fly very much. But let's talk about their phylogeny and evolution. I will preface this section by saying Antpittas have undergone a lot of revision over the years, especially as genetic evidence has conflicted with previously thought relationships based on physical characteristics. We encounter this all the time when we talk about phylogeny and evolution in the show. Before genetic research, birds were characterized based on morphological features like their plumage or maybe their behavior or like what their bones looked like. And, then we test their genetics and we're like, oh man, like a lot of this we thought was, similar about these birds is just convergent evolution. So now we got to shuffle things around. But, sorry, a little bit of wind picking up this morning. First, I'll start with the subossine and ossine split. I've talked about this on the show before, but I honestly think this is the first subossine species I've covered, at least the first extant living subossine species. I think maybe I talked about subossine species with some of my extinct bird episodes. But the subossine split is a major split that occurred early on in bird evolution. It's a split of the passerines or perching birds that first evolved on the southern continent of Gondwana into two orders, the ossines and subossines. This split corresponded with the breakup of Gondwana as South America separated from Africa and Australasia. The ossines, also known as the true songbirds, evolved in Africa and Australasia, while the subossines evolved in South America. All this occurred around 50 million years ago. The subossines contain some birds familiar to us North Americans, like ovenbirds and tyrant flycatchers, and also birds confined to Middle and South America, like antbirds, manakins, and cotingas. I'll also note that the subossines quickly made it out of the Americas to colonize the Old World, and those pittas of Africa we talked about earlier that lent the Antpittas their name are actually also in the subossine order. And that's actually where the first major split in the subossine evolution occurs between the clade Tyranides that contains all the Americas subossines and the clade Eurolamides that contains the subossines of the Old World. An exception to this is a cool bird called the Sapayoa, which is found in Panama. It was previously assigned to the manakin family, and it was a huge surprise with DNA analysis that revealed it to be more closely related to Old World subossines. Looking at the genetic relationships to other Old World subossines, it appears that the ancestor to the Sapayoa actually recolonized South America after that initial New World subossine ancestor had made it over to the Old World and become the Eurolamidae clade. Things get complicated with bird evolution. They're just so mobile, They fly to one continent and then, evolve and speciate, and then they fly back and evolve and speciate and just back and forth, back and forth. So I hope that wasn't too confusing there. But within the Tyranidae, so this is the subossines that stayed in the New World. The Antpittas belong to the family Grallaridae, which are about 55 species of forest understory dwelling birds in the tropics of Central and South America. Although it's 55 species, there's only 4 genuses in the family: Grallaria, Grallaricula, Cryptopezis, Myrmothera, and Hylopezis. And remember, Hylopezis is the genus our streak-chested Antpitta belongs to. And where these species belong in the genuses has been shuffled around a lot. I'm going off a lead researcher named Lincoln Silva Carneiro, who published 2 genetic studies in 2012 and 2018 of Antpitta's phylogeny. And there's also a massive genetic study done in 2020 by lead researcher Michael Harvey. And he did like genetic analysis of evolutionary tree for over 1,000 subossine birds. So I'm kind of combining their 2 genetic research to make my deductions here. Grallaria is the largest and most basal genus of this family with over 40 species. And the common ancestor of all Antpittas likely looked like modern grallarian species, with kind of a longer tail compared to the other genuses, bigger feet, and longer legs. It's estimated this genus first diverged around 26 million years ago during the early Miocene. The Miocene is a really interesting period in South America because this is when the Andes Mountains were rising up, which totally changed the weather patterns and precipitation across South America. It's also when some of the major rivers, like the Amazon River, began to form. Whenever there's ecological and geographical changes, this offers opportunities for speciation, and this is likely why we see the genuses within the Antpitta family form around this time. There's sort of an oddball out in the Antpitta family. It's a bird called the Spectacled Antpitta. Speckled-breasted. I mean, that's just way too close of a name to streak-chested. Speckled-breasted, streak-chested. That's why we need to go back to the Spectacled Antpitta. But anyway, the speckled-breasted Antpitta, it used to belong to the Grallaria genus, but DNA analysis showed it is sort of a genetic loner, and it was split off into its own genus. This streak-chested Antpitta is really specialized in its environment. It specializes on thick tangles of bamboo and undergrowth in the mountains of southern Brazil. I read a cool study that attempted to figure out the geographical evolution of Antpittas. It appears that Antpittas originated more in the northwestern area of South America, and then the split off of the spectacle-breasted Antpitta occurred when its ancestor made it over towards the Atlantic coast of South America. Remember, Antpittas, they are all very terrestrial birds, weak flyers, so they don't really distribute very much. So just one of them making it over to the Atlantic coast was enough for it to kind of form its own species and niche. And I mean, it's telling that the family evolved in northwestern South America, and that's really where you find almost all Antpitta species today. They evolved there, and they're like, yeah, we're just gonna stay close to home. Anyway, next in Antpitta evolution is the Grallaricula common ancestor that split off from the Myrmothera and Hylopezis common ancestor. Myrmothera and Hylopezis are sister taxon to each other. They first formed in western South America around 16 million years ago. And like I said, they mostly stayed around where they evolved in that northwestern part of South America. But Myrmothera and Hylopezis, they're a little bit more mobile of the Antpittas, I guess, because they did make it up into Middle America, including our streak-chested Antpitta, which, remember, has a range all the way of Ecuador down into the northern part of South America. There's 5 subspecies of streak-chested Antpitta described. This is all based on minor morphological characteristics. They were named way back in the late 1800s and early 1900s. With how much has changed in this bird's evolutionary history with the advent of genetic testing, I really think the subspecies of the streak-chested Antpitta need to be revisited to see if they are true subspecies or just some different populations. I mean, that maybe goes back to lumper and splitter arguments. So one last note on these birds, and this applies to Antpittas in general. These are small birds with relatively small tails and wings. Each species has their own specific niche and specializes in a certain environment. And this makes dispersal of them very difficult. They aren't strong at flying, they can't survive well out of their specific environment. And on one hand, this makes it hard for them to colonize new places. If if the example, I guess, with humans, if you don't have a car and you need like a very specific diet, it's hard for you to travel. So, it makes it hard for these birds to go new places. But it also means that once they do get to a place that they are able to survive, they're sort of kind of stuck there. And then there's not much gene flow to their original like place where they came from. So then that helps to promote new speciation. So you can see this family of birds, like it's kind of surprising that there's like 55 different species. But I think it's because whenever these little guys pack up and move somewhere and then set up their population, they're not going back and spreading their mixing genes again. So then they just kind of form their own little isolated population, which forms their own little species. And I mean, honestly, if more research is done into the street-chested Antpitta subspecies, which appear to be also like geographically separated too, along with those morphological characteristics, I bet if you did genetic testing on them, there may even be some evidence to support them being broken up into their own separate species. Again, lumper and splitter. So maybe we will get that spectacled Antpitta after all. Or if we just change the common name to spectacled Antpitta, then maybe all the subspecies we can name after like some different types of glasses, like I don't know, the aviator spectacled Antpitta, the horn-rimmed spectacled Antpitta. All right, come on, Fernando, get busy with some research here. But anyway, short but sweet episode. I hope you guys liked it. Fernando, I hope your daughter likes it. And as always, stay dirty, fellow birdies. Dirty Bird Podcast is brought to you by me, Jahn, with my rotating panel of guests and co-hosts. Thanks for being on the show, everybody. The Dirty Bird theme song is by Ricky Pistone. Check out his groovy and hilarious music videos on YouTube. The outro music you're listening to right now is a song New York Redneck by the Sidewalk Slammers. Check them out wherever you get your music. The Dirty Bird Podcast logo is by the very talented TJ Ranoski. And of course, a shout out to my beautiful wife, Lauren, who created my original logo. Check out the show notes for this episode for a full list of credits for any bird calls or sounds used in the episode. Thanks for listening.
At the track, drive into Brooklyn, ain't never coming back. Tim's on the ground in the concrete jungle. I might get into a little